Lando Norris was so quick in Miami. Why did this happen? Well, he had a full raft of McLaren upgrades. They brought so many new components to the car in Miami, half of which went to Oscar Piastri, but Norris had the full contingent as the favoured driver in the team. Right now, he's ahead and he's got a better chance of winning, as he proved on Sunday. And it really worked for him in the Grand Prix. That was the first time we saw the true pace of that car that we'd seen glimpses of through sprint qualifying. He was the fastest driver in the whole session in SQ2 on the medium tyres. But in Miami, the soft tyres in qualifying were on a knife edge. It was so difficult to get the lap out of the tyres with 19 corners, high temperatures, and a tyre that was so brittle that hooking it up through all of the different sectors was really tricky. So I think McLaren probably didn't get their head around that particularly well in qualifying. But in the race, Norris, certainly once Perez pitted and he had clear air, showed the potential of that car, and it was tremendous. He was so quick. Question one, how much did Max Verstappen lose out by hitting the bollard? Because this was an obvious moment in the Grand Prix, and Red Bull have said that there was a bit of damage on the car. Let's have a look at Max coming up through turns 14 and 15 and hitting the bollard. Something that looked quite dramatic when the mark again then gets wiped out on the front wing. The front wing is clearly still intact there. It survived quite a big force, and the bollard gets stuck in the front wishbones, the suspension there, and then it's going to flick back and go through the whole car and eventually disappear onto the racing line, bringing out a very short virtual safety car. You can see here from Max on board, he just slides coming into turn 14 here. He's got a lead of about 3 seconds. He's pushing on. This is Max working hard at the wheel, trying to build a big gap. The pace wasn't coming super easy for him. And he just turns in to turn 14. The rear just lets go a little bit. He's going to lose the car if he continues to commit to the turn. So he backs out. But he's sort of neither here nor there. He's wanting to back out earlier, you'd go through there. Wanting to make the corner, of course, you go through there. But if you go halfway and then bail out, well, you're heading straight for that bollard. And it was a lot more solid and sturdy than I think anyone, including Max, would have assumed. Now, if we go back and have a look at this again, Red Bull has said that there was damage to the left rear of Verstappen's car. And they've seen a hole in the floor that was quite small, but there. And you can see, if we play this through slowly, where the car now hits the bollard, and then it launches here, and you can see, as the car now comes down around this area, you can just see this is where the bollard grounding point is, and it's going to hit the back end of the Red Bull just there, right on the trailing end of the floor, and that just does a little bit of damage to Verstappen's floor. Now, how significant was that? I'm not sure it was enough to change the race and give Max the win had he not done that. And we can see, looking at a little pace graph, just how strong actually Lando Norris was in the race. So then this graph shows the stint pace of Lando in the solid orange, Max in the blue, and the dashed orange is Oscar Piastri in the other McLaren. And the interesting thing is, Norris is the fastest car on track. Bollard or no bollard, he is the fastest man. As soon as Sergio Perez pits at this point here, Norris now has free air. He's in 5th position. He's got a free license to go and attack those ahead. And for these laps before Verstappen pits, he is quite comfortably the fastest man on the circuit. Now, Max has free air, Lando has free air, and Lando is quicker. Max hits the bollard on this lap here, and you can see that actually he doesn't lose a huge amount of time. On the one lap, yes, but then just after, he manages to get down to a pace that was very similar to what he managed before hitting the bollard. And Max said he didn't feel a big difference before and after. So whilst there might have been a bit of damage, I don't believe it was significant enough to completely derail his race. The interesting thing was Norris just actually had the pace in clear air. He was the fastest man before the bollard, after the bollard. And this was a weekend where Red Bull didn't quite hit the sweet spot of the setup either. And Verstappen pitting first opened the door to the safety car to bring other rivals into play and pit and come out ahead. And that is exactly what happened. If we just go back and have a look and see the pace difference that there was between the McLaren and the Red Bull as well, it's the apex speeds, turns 1, turn 8, and in the medium-low speed of turn 11 and 12. This is where Norris was very strong. And you can see also on the steering trace up here, the amount of steering that Verstappen's having to put on in the red trace. He's a driver that doesn't like understeer and was struggling with a lot of understeer, particularly up there, turn 12, just putting more and more steering lock on to try and rotate the car. And he was having to wait in those apexes, and that is what was costing him typically with big floor damage and a little bit of loss of downforce, you'd see some more spiky oversteers, you'd find the car difficult to drive, and the driver would probably be feeling and radioing something pretty quickly as well. Max didn't feel that, he didn't radio it. The data doesn't look too bad for him either, apart from the understeer that he was already reporting. So to me, the bollard wasn't the defining feature of this race.
The pace was just not really there. Like, I was pulling away, but it was just marginal, you know, so it wasn't particularly good. But then on the hard tyre, it really took a step back where, of course, on the harder compound, you have a little bit lower mechanical grip, and that then tipped it over the edge where, yeah, we didn't seem to have a lot of grip.
So the next question then, what about the safety car? Well, firstly, there was a bit of an issue where Max was picked up by the safety car, as we can see here, when Lando was actually leading the race. So the safety car picks up the wrong driver, and this allowed Norris to have a completely easy free pit stop and come out still half a lap ahead of Verstappen. So there's no doubt at this point, there is nothing Max can do. He could recognise the situation straight away, was over the radio saying, well, this is tough then. And Norris now has the lead, and that's that at this stage under safety car. But was this the defining part of the race? No. Without this, even if the safety car had not picked up Max and waited for another lap, then Norris still had the gap to pit and come out ahead. He had 11.5 seconds, and on a really short Miami pit lane, when the safety car is deployed, you only need 9 seconds to come out in front. So even if the safety car hadn't have picked up Verstappen and slowed him down whilst Lando was still circulating back to the pits, then Norris still would have had a 2-second buffer, which should have been enough for the McLaren pit crew to get him out and into the lead. The next question is what happens if there was no safety car at all? And that's an interesting one because of the way that Norris was flying in the Grand Prix, had so much more pace. Could he possibly have even challenged for the win regardless? Well, we don't know, and we're not going to find out. But it was certainly looking interesting. He would have come out about 5 or 6 seconds behind Verstappen, but crucially, would have had plenty of cars in the way. So he still would have had to pass Verstappen, Leclerc, probably Piastri, and maybe even Sainz as well. It would have depended on so many different parameters, how long he could have taken his first stint tyres. He was still going very quickly before the safety car came out, so possibly that could have given him a good advantage later on. We'll never know, but it would have been an interesting dynamic. Anyway, ifs, buts and maybes, everything did happen as it did. The safety car came out, it turned the race towards Norris, and once that McLaren that was so quick hit the front, he just disappeared off into the distance.
It's been a long time coming, but finally I've managed to do it, so I'm so happy for my whole team. I finally delivered for them, and yeah, long day, tough race, but finally on top, so I'm over the moon.